Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the What the Fantasy Football Show. We got a lot of things to cover for you tonight, but first, I have to let you know we are a part of the Full Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can check us out at Full Time Fantasy each and every day. There's new pods coming out, lots of great information. Superflex, IDP, Dynasty, we got you covered no matter what you have. So come on, check us out. But first, before we get into everything else, we have to bring on the one, the only, the man that just tends to make everything come together. And when I mean that, it's usually something he has to wipe away with a lot of tissues, but we won't get into that. And that's Mr. Tony Cincotta.
Hey, it's good to be here, Jim. Of course, Mike Blewitt, WTF Fantasy Football, Week 6 of the fantasy football season. I got to tell you, Week 6, we're almost, 42%, Mike? 42% of the season done. How's that for math, Mike?
Pretty good. I'm not going to double check you because I don't want to make you look bad in the first couple of minutes of the show, but I feel pretty good about it.
I thought I handled that pretty well already, Mike.
I'll tell you what, we're going to start out bad on the show. We might as well get right into it. Depending on the scoring format in your league, Mike Evans and Baker Mayfield put up 2 zeros this week in fantasy football. Now, I've been doing this a long time, and I don't remember 2 stars of that caliber getting zeros in the same week. Mike, can you remember anything like this? And these guys, Baker Mayfield went as high as the 3rd quarterback off the board in some drafts. Mike Evans slipped a little this year, but still solid 2nd, early 3rd round pick. Zeros from these 2 guys. What do we expect going forward? Can we see it again?
I think what we have seen to some extent is Godwin taking over as the number one. You saw DFS pricing flip-flop for the first time a couple of weeks ago, and then Mike Evans has the monster half. Now we're seeing more inconsistency with Evans, and I just think overall, those people, Mike Evans slipped a lot in drafts, and I think there was a fear of this happening. For Godwin to have a 12 for 172 and 2 scores, followed by a 7 for 125 and 2 scores, and Evans to throw up a 0 in the midst of that is stunning. So you can obviously chalk it up to one bad week in terms of how bad the scoring output was, but I think it's a sign of a trend that he is not the number one target there anymore.
Jim, what's your thoughts on Mike Evans this week and Baker Mayfield putting up a 0?
Oh, man, it's crazy. But, the funny part about that was Odell Beckham had better passing fantasy numbers than Baker Mayfield did. He only completed 1 pass for 20 yards, but he still had more numbers than Baker Mayfield. But the bigger question I have for you there, and I have to ask this because it makes me crazy, and this is where the quarterback rating system goes off the rails for me, but Odell throws 1 pass, completes it for 20 yards, doesn't try another, doesn't throw an interception, yet his QB rating is only 118.8.
Oh, I don't know, man. Those are the really smart guys that put that thing together, and I never really understood it, and I really understood how that you put something together where you want a perfect score that's something like 153.2. Like, why wouldn't they round the number, Mike Blewitt?
I don't know, 158.3. It's not a perfect rating anymore, clearly. We see everybody's QB ratings are far higher now than they used to be, just on the basis of the volume of passing and clearly the accuracy of passing. But to Jim's point, I mean, should it even really be a 118? He tried 1 pass. I'm not impressed. I get that he can throw it. The more concerning thing about Odell, 4 catches, 47 yards in 2 games, the lowest output in 2 games in his entire career.
Oh, it's coming, folks. It's coming. The Odell implosion is coming.
See,
another week like that, and we're going to see him go off.
And I think that was the point of emphasis where he got that play called for the first play of the game is because the week before he gets shut out, we'll keep Odell happy. We're going to make him throw a pass here. Mike, I hope that play was not scripted like that and that was a broken play because I've never seen a receiver take a pitch and then go back the way he came from with no blockers in front of him and throw that pass.
Well, I think that is a loaded question simply because of how bad things are with Cleveland right now. I think it's confirmed that Freddie Kitchens is in over his head. I think Odell was doing anything he could to make a play behind an offensive line that proved to be terrible against a great Niners front, but it's terrible against a lot of teams. Beckham also got 2 carries for 15 yards. I just think they're doing anything they can with all these playmakers to try to make something happen. And I think Kitchens is in a really bad spot right now. I think he's proven to be a guy that is in over his head right now as a head coach.
I agree with that, but Jim, I keep hearing about this Cleveland offensive line being so bad. Jim, back in your yesteryear, you were an offensive lineman, right?
Long time ago.
So why does Nick Chubb run for so many yards on this offensive line and they can't pass block?
Well, it's two totally different functions, and there's a lot of teams out there that are really good at one and not so good at the other, just how it works out. And a big part of that reason that they're not very good at the pass blocking was they gave up their best guard and Kevin Zeitler to the Giants. And we've seen the Giants' offensive line improve a big amount with him on their line. And we've seen just the opposite with Cleveland. And it's gotten so bad now that Baker is afraid of his shadow.
It's amazing. I actually seen a lot of posts on Facebook, got some emails, people asking to trade for Odell Beckham, what they should give up, and people trying to jump in while he's had the two bad games. And I'll tell you what, Mike, would you be trying to go get Odell Beckham, and what would you give up for a guy like that?
I'm not quite as eager as some, but it's always a good time to try to buy low on guys that are superstars. We wouldn't expect that his production will continue to remain in the 2-catch for 24-yard range. But if I'm an Odell owner, I'm just going to sit tight because at this point, you're not going to get what you want for him.
I totally agree. I think once you're painted in the corner, if you're a Beckham owner, everybody's going to be knocking at your door. Everybody's going to want 50 cents on the dollar. Jim, give me a name of someone that you would offer in a trade for Odell Beckham.
Well, it really depends on, are you looking for the same position? You're trying to move wide receiver for wide receiver. You're going the other way. But let's see. If I have a wide receiver now that I wanted to trade for Odell, it would probably be somebody, I'd probably go with somebody like an Allen Robinson. While I like Allen Robinson, I still think that Beckham has bigger upside going forward. Robinson has some not so easy matchups at the end of the season in playoff time that I would rather stay away from if I can.
All right, Mike, I'm going to give you a trade offer, and I think you're going to laugh at me, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm that type of guy. Odell Beckham Jr. is averaging 12.8 points per game in 1-point PPR leagues, and I am willing to give you the 6th leading wide receiver in the National Football League in fantasy football, DJ Chark, at 21 points per game. Would you take DJ Chark for your Odell Beckham?
It's closer than you would suggest because Chark is in a pretty good spot right now. But as I said, I'm holding tight on the guy that should be able to, if and when they figure this out, he could still tear the roof off of certain defenses.
Jim,
I'm not giving up my man Gardner Minshew's favorite target. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
Jim,
I've been yelling and screaming about Minshew since week 1. Finally, everybody else is starting to talk about him. Kid looks better each and every week.
Yeah. Out here, then they got streets named after him already, I think. Yeah. I gotta tell you, but did you think in week 6 we'd be talking about Gardner Minshew and DJ Chark?
No. Look, DJ Chark wasn't even getting drafted. There was no buzz at all. Preseason, OTAs, no buzz about him at all.
None.
And then he just came storming into the season. He might be the waiver wire pickup of the year.
He is.
Say, the coach actually put out some nice words about him this week. He says, there's a guy that gets it. He says, after the first year, he learns how to read the playbook, how to run the routes, when to go to bed at night, and he's here to play football, and we love every day he walks into the arena.
Yeah, it's crazy because he's another LSU guy that we're seeing the athleticism that comes out of LSU on a regular basis, especially the wide receiver position, even though they haven't been able to throw down there until this season for about a decade. It's really impressive. I go back to Jim's point about Chark. We talked on this show where there were only 3 ownable assets on the entire Jaguars team for fantasy. Their defense, Dede Westbrook, and Leonard Fournette, because Foles was a deep QB2, and Chark was sort of maybe not going to be even an ownable asset. And now here he is, and he's an extremely valuable piece, much more valuable at this moment than Westbrook, even though the catch numbers are not far off.
The craziest thing about Chark, though, I got to add this, is that He probably had two of the best catches of the year last
Yeah.
week, and neither one of them counted.
Yeah, geez. And he put up 164 yards. Amazing numbers there. Of course, they got a tough game against New Orleans. For all the people out there that play in IDP leagues, Jalen Ramsey's back was better today, and he practiced for everybody out there. So Jalen Ramsey and Mike Thomas we might be able to see on Sunday.
Well, Jalen Ramsey, I mean, look, I'm not buying the whole back injury thing. This is a man who's doing everything he can not to play, but not to get fined.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with you. Moving out west to the Arizona Cardinals. Jim, is Chase Edmonds a thing? 8 rushes, 68 yards, a touchdown, and the coach all of a sudden wants to watch how many carries David Johnson gets.
Well, they're worried about David Johnson's back, and that's a real worry. So, yeah, I mean, Edmonds is a guy, we always talk about handcuffs, and if you own David Johnson, then at this point, with the back news coming out, I would absolutely want to make sure I have Chase Edmonds. He's a good back. He's not David Johnson, but he's a good back. He can catch the football as well, so he should be involved in the passing game. And, again, if you're sitting on David Johnson, you should have Edmonds on your team.
Mike, last week I mentioned the 8 carries in this Arizona offense and the way they've been getting the running back involved in the offense. Even if David Johnson plays and you have some bye weeks coming up with 4 teams and 6 teams in the next couple of weeks, is there any way you could play Edmonds when David Johnson's still in the lineup?
I think last week was really the only evidence, unfortunately, we have to this point of that being a possibility. Keep in mind, Christian Kirk was also out, so there's a little bit of a pivot. He caught 3 passes there. He touched the ball a total of 11 times. I do think it's something to keep an eye on, but at this moment, I mean, this is a good matchup coming up against Atlanta and then the Giants, who give up points to backs. But I do think that it is the only evidence we have. I think he's a good sort of draft or pick up and stash guy. I just don't know that I can guarantee that he'll keep seeing double-digit touches per game.
Yeah, I don't think he does, so I'll say no.
Jim says no. We watched Monday Night Football. We talked about the Cleveland Browns. The 49ers showed an elite running game Monday night against the Browns, but now the offensive line, who was without Joe Staley, loses Mike McGlinchey for 4 to 6 weeks, and their fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who's a 3-time Pro Bowler. Mike, we saw those two guys both rush for 100 yards. Now what's the 49ers running game going to be like this week? And I'll tell you what, people are going to be going to the waiver wire because Tevin Coleman was on waiver wires, I saw, and Matt Breida was on some waiver wires.
Yeah, now they get the Rams, Washington, Carolina coming up, and then Arizona. So, look, that obviously is going to hurt in some capacity, but you have to talk in the context of Kyle Shanahan's scheming for the run game. Did a great job in Atlanta. He's got some pieces here. He's doing it again. Even every guy that's had the ball spread around to him this season on the Niners has scored. Wilson, Mostert, Coleman, Breida. So I think they're pieces that you can have on your bench. And as people start to get healthier, as we start to hit bye weeks, as you've already mentioned, they could be pieces. There's just no guarantees on a week-to-week basis beyond Coleman and Breida.
Jim, what's your thoughts?
Well, I've talked about Breida ad infinitum. I like him a lot. I think he's the best back on this team. But obviously, they like Coleman as well. And, he fits what they're trying to do with Kyle Shanahan's offense. We know he loves to dump it off to the running backs and get them involved in a lot of different ways. So that's a great thing. The one thing I really took from this Breida with that long touchdown run was the Next Gen Stats came up and said that he was the fastest player in any game at any point this year on that one run.
Yeah, 23 miles an hour. Yeah, that was absolutely insane. And it's kind of crazy. And I love all the stats. It's funny when you're watching the games now and you see a couple in the bottom of the screen, the ticker's evolving as we get more and more analytics involved in football. Mike, do you like seeing that at the bottom of your ticker, a couple next-gen stats?
Yeah, I don't mind it. The more the merrier. Some of them are always kind of funky like that. Like Jim's talking about the 23 miles an hour. It is impressive. But realistically, none of us think that Matt Breida is the fastest player in the league, and it doesn't much matter as long as he was a tenth of a mile an hour faster than the guy that was chasing him. That's really all that matters.
That's all that matters in football, and if you're getting chased by the cops.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, look, I like those kinds of stats. Those are
Yeah, they're fun.
little humorous, throw-ins that you can throw out there for people that didn't see it, that kind of thing. But yeah, I don't, I'm not going to say, oh man, got to make sure Breeder's in my lineup. He's the fastest guy in the league.
So I watched that game. I was impressed with the running game. I was impressed with the running backs. But I came to the conclusion on that night that if you play in a 12-team league, Jimmy Garoppolo is not a fantasy starter and won't be. We've talked about a lot this guy for the last couple of years. One, I don't think he's as good as advertised. And two, they have no wide receivers on that team, Mike.
That's why I don't judge him as harshly as you're about to. Pettis dropped a touchdown pass the other night, too.
Right in his hands, too.
Yeah, I mean, the wide receiver situation, maybe I am being a little harsh on him because of that, but they have no wide receiver. There's certain teams, like we were talking about Tampa Bay, where you don't know who the number one is. I don't know who the number 1 through 4 is on that team. Yeah. I mean, to me, Marquise Goodwin looks like the most polished receiver. This guy was a track star, not a football player.
Yeah. If Pettis catches that pass the other night, though, Jimmy's then 21 of 29 for like 210 and 3 scores, and they didn't need to throw at all because they were running over the Browns the whole time. So, his stats, I'd say, do not belie what you are talking about because he is hitting at a 69% completion percentage. I just don't know. Still,
of course, he's hitting a 69%
completion
they don't throw
percentage
because he throws it 3 yards past the line of scrimmage.
You're right.
I hate Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Nick Mullins should be the starter.
Oh, that's right. You're the Nick Mullins truther. I get
it.
But I mean, they're freaking 4-0, and they looked great the other night. They're
4-0 because they got a great coach and they're running a dynamic offense.
You're not wrong.
Their defense is killer. They spent a lot of money on their defense, and it looks like it.
Yeah. Well, we're gonna go the other extreme now. From the San Francisco, we'll go back to the East Coast. And the New York Football Giants are going to play the New England Patriots on Thursday night without Sterling Shepard, without Wayne Gallman, without Saquon Barkley, and now without Evan Ingram.
Oh, and now also just now popped up without Daniel Jones.
Really?
Yeah, he came into the trainer's office today and said his back hurts.
Eli, he owns the Patriots. Maybe that's what they're thinking. Jim,
no, I think Daniel Jones said, I don't want to play this game.
I was going to, that's one of the things when you don't want to throw the quarterback to the wolves. But let me ask you a question. People are hitting the waiver wire tonight. Is there anyone out there that's going to Golden Tate's the only name that most people would recognize out there. Is anyone out there that's going to jump out and get some fantasy goodness?
For the Giants?
Yes. Against the Patriots?
So. Yeah,
there's got to be some offense in this game, right?
Darius Slayton was a guy that got picked up in a bunch of leagues already, but it's a 1 week pickup.
Yeah. And it's not even a good. John Hilliman would be the other one. Yeah. Got a lot of people jumped on because he's going to be starting this week, but it won't matter. The Giants have an implied point total of less than 13 points in this game.
You going over or under?
Yeah, I'm going under.
I'm
going under.
I'm under too.
I don't.
I think this looks like the Washington game.
It would be a 35-3 game.
Yeah.
And on the other side of that game, it wouldn't shock me if the Patriots, Burkhead's definitely going to be out, but it looks like Edelman and Dorsett could sit this game out. This would be a great Thursday night game.
Michelle, baby. Sony Michelle.
Dorsett is already out. Burkhead isn't out yet. They haven't officially named him out yet, but Dorsett is definitely out.
They've been resting players for the entire season so far. They haven't played anybody yet. They haven't played anybody.
Imagine that you're the Super Bowl winners and you have the easiest schedule in the freaking league. How does that work?
Played 3 winless teams, a Steelers team, broken down Steelers team, and a broken down Giants team. So Slayton and Hilliman are the guys that you can try to pick up for a week, but you're really only doing it not to play them against the Patriots, but in case Barkley misses yet another week and some of these other guys miss yet another week. But
I'll tell you, the one sneaky play, if you're really desperate at tight end this week, and a couple of people I've talked to already are, because of the injuries, the buys, everything that, O.J. Howard sucking, all that kind of stuff. Red Ellison might even come into play. He might get a few catches in this one as well. They have no problem throwing to him when Ingram's not there. So, I mean, if you're really desperate, why not take the chance? It's not like New England's going to go out and make sure to take Red Ellison out of the game.
That O.J. Howard catch at the baseball game the other night was pretty impressive. I don't know if you guys saw that. That's a one-hander.
Yeah.
One question, though, on Evan Ingram. It's an MCL sprain. That isn't necessary. Kyle Juszczyk has an MCL sprain. He's out a month. What is the expectation on Ingram? I know it's early, but that could be a multi-week injury.
It absolutely could. They haven't really said much more than that yet, but it absolutely could be a multi-week injury. There's no doubt about it. But, hey, I'm okay with that. I want the Giants to keep losing. I want a better draft pick. We ain't going nowhere this year.
Yeah, it's interesting. Speaking of teams going nowhere this year and hitting the waiver wire, the New York Jets get back quarterback Sam Darnold this weekend. And does all of a sudden Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder have fantasy life this week?
I'd give him a little edge this week. I think they come to a little bit of life, but I'm going to see Darnold on the field after all this trauma he's been through. I'm not sure I'm ready to invest in him, especially against the Cowboys in his first game back.
Mike, your thoughts?
I've been hanging on to Robbie Anderson for some ungodly reason, hoping that Darnold would come back and help him. Their next 3 games are Dallas, New England, and the Jaguars. So it's not looking good at all. And based on the way their coach sent Luke Falk out to the Wolves on Sunday, you can't feel very confident about the game planning that's going on there. The Jets put out there the worst NFL product of the year these last couple of weeks.
You know what? I give Le'Veon Bell a lot of credit for a guy that imploded his way out of Pittsburgh. He plays really hard on a really bad team.
He's always been known, as a hard worker. He practices hard. He plays hard. He's always done that. Nobody ever criticized him for that.
Well, he was a little overweight when he came in the league.
Yeah, he was. He did lose weight after his first year. He was known to miss a test here and there. He was known for
he was hanging out with Garrett Blunt, Jim.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah. I'm not saying any of that. That is what it is. But, it's not like everybody criticized him of not wanting to work hard on the practice field ever, at least that I can remember.
Look, he's never pulled a Jalen Ramsey or an Antonio Brown situation. Like, he's out there. He runs hard. He plays hard. He does.
But if you watch the Jets, it's like he's the only professional player on the whole team.
You're right. That is the major problem.
I mean, you watch
the
game,
situation,
including the coach.
That's right.
I watched the game.
They're not running an NFL offense. It's not an NFL offense.
This guy's got to get out of there, and he doesn't say a bad word about it or nothing. Yeah. Like, they got to get him out of there because he's going to get killed.
Yes, all true. Their offensive line is amongst the worst in the league. This keeps coming up, and offensive line play is an issue around the league. But these teams that are really getting crushed, the Browns, the Jets, the Washington, missing Trent Williams, Cincinnati, Miami, these teams can't win a game. They have no chance because they can't protect anybody or open up any holes.
That's the first time in a few years the Giants weren't mentioned in that kind of list.
No kidding. Because Zeitler was a huge upgrade for them.
He was a huge upgrade, no
Solder
doubt.
is a disaster of
he
a contract.
Has been. Yes.
But Zeitler was a huge positive for them.
Yep.
I like to see statistic anomalies and try to figure out what they mean or if it's just a short sample size. We're 5 weeks in. The Dallas Cowboys have a guy they paid $90 million to in Ezekiel Elliott. Yet I look at fantasy football rankings, and the number 5 wide receivers from the Dallas Cowboys and the number 8 receivers from the Dallas Cowboys, of course, Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup if you go for points per game. Jim, do they got things mixed up here in Dallas? Are they supposed to be running the ball a little more, and can these 2 wide receivers keep it up?
No, I think they're doing it smart. Look, this is a team that's pretty much, a good lock to get to the playoffs, I think. I think they're a good, solid, all-around team. Had a couple of weeks where they played down a little to the talent that they were playing against, so hopefully they get that rectified. We've seen that before. Hopefully it doesn't become a trend. But, this game wasn't as bad as the week before when everything went back to 2018 Dallas where they run, punt, run, punt. They just didn't have any changes to it at all. They didn't run much play action pass. They didn't pass on first down, all the things they were doing the first few weeks. So I think we get back to that trend. I think getting Gallup back definitely helps, give him somebody to stretch the field with and, opposite Cooper, and just takes a little bit of that pressure off Cooper. Now, all of that stuff comes together to work the play action pass to get Elliott involved more. But ultimately, I think they're just trying to keep Elliott as fresh as they can so that when they get to later in the season and into the playoffs, he's a pretty fresh guy.
Mike, Jim says a lot of nice things there, but I can see Jerry Jones getting whiter and whiter and whiter, saying, I'm paying that guy $90 million. Can someone give him the effing football?
Yeah, so they play the Jets, Philly, have a bye, and then the Giants. I think that's a chance to get right. But I think you are hitting on something that I keep thinking about when it comes to the Cowboys. I think Jim's right. I think they should be able to make the playoffs. But if they are protecting Zeke after giving him all this money to try to turn it on later in the season, and it results in them losing a game or two along the way and they don't have home playoff games, then I do think it's going to be a terrible disadvantage for them. I know they aren't a great home team overall. If people think they are, they need to look at the record books because stats have proven that the Dallas isn't really that great at home in Jerry's world. The problem overall, and with Jerry getting whiter and whiter, is that I don't have any faith that the coaching staff can get on a run to win the Super Bowl. None. Zero. I don't think they can get it done, and I would never pick Dallas to be a Super Bowl favorite right now.
You know, I think it's a problem in the NFL, and it started with the Cowboys. They got too many coaches on these teams. Like the Cowboys have 2 coaches for every position, and there's too many Chiefs there, and man, I don't even know if Jason Garrett knows what play is being called because half the time he doesn't have a headset on. Like, how can he be the head coach?
I agree. He's clapping it up on the sidelines. He's the clapper. I just don't think that I just don't think they're going to get it done. It's great to see Dak playing better, getting the passing offense going, but in critical situations, I don't think any of us trust them. They're a really good, talented defensive football team, and that is the biggest difference in this team over the last couple of years. The fact that Dak has played well thus far this season is another positive, but I just don't believe in them. They've lost 2 games in a row that, you know, they have every chance. You're not going to go undefeated, but they had every chance to win both of those games, and they just couldn't do it.
Yeah, but I mean, it wasn't like Dak had a bad game. He threw for 460 some odd yards.
I know,
and a couple of touchdowns. Of course, he had the 3 interceptions, but yeah, every quarterback has that game.
One was tipped,
everything
though.
goes. Yeah, and I hate. That's like my biggest pet peeve in football is calling those interceptions.
There should be errors. Like the baseball error, right?
Like what happened with Baker. What happened on that goal line the other night with Baker? Callaway threw it up in the air. Yeah. It was a touchdown, and Callaway threw it up in the air and gets returned 40 yards the other way.
Yeah, and anytime you hit a receiver in the hands, an NFL receiver who gets paid a lot of money to catch the ball, you hit him in square in the hands, and he pops it up, and it becomes an interception. To me, that's no way in hell that should be called an interception.
You know, I like working with you 2 guys, but I wish Bill Belichick was on the show because I got a question I'd like to ask him, but he's not available. So I'll ask you 2 guys.
I hear Mike does a really good Belichick impression.
On to Cincinnati.
See, I told you.
Now, here's the thing. What do you think your job as the head coach in the NFL is? Is your job to win every Sunday, or is your job to think long and hard through the season and win a Super Bowl? Mike, how do you put it together?
If you're giving me those 2 choices, it's to try to put it together to win a Super Bowl. We hear often relative to the Pats that they're using September oftentimes to try some things out in the offense. And I think you saw last year the Patriots even morphed over the course of the year where they became run heavy as things got later and later into the season because they ultimately knew their biggest challenge was going to be they were going to see challenges in the playoffs last year that were Baltimore potentially and then Kansas City. And what did they do? They ran over those teams and kept their offenses off the field and ended up winning yet another Super Bowl. So I think Belichick plans it out that way. While you're trying to win every game, it's okay if you go 12-4 if you're the Pats because you're just trying to play your best football when it comes to January.
Jim, the reason I asked the question was not because of Bill Belichick. I want to know if Matt LaFleur will figure out that Aaron Jones can catch the ball and maybe they can leave him in on 3 downs in today's NFL. Do you think Matt LaFleur will change his mind as far as when everybody's healthy, how he divvies up the running back plays?
No, probably not. Everybody's trying to copy Bill and what he does, and the fact that he uses interchangeable backs is pretty much going to start happening everywhere around the league. I think they want to get pieces that do different things. They want to use them all, so they're not really jamming down any one player. And I think that's going to become more the reality than the exception very soon. And we're seeing more and more teams do that now.
Yeah. Tony, I've been saying this about the Steelers. Now, unfortunately, Jalen Samuels is out for a month, but I don't see any reason that the Steelers have to commit to a one-back set and a one-back responsibility type of team. I understood it when Le'Veon Bell was there because he's so talented, but even when Le'Veon Bell would go down, it would be Connor only. And then Connor would go down and Fitzgerald Toussaint would be the guy, or Jalen Samuels would be the guy. I don't understand why they can't mix it up. Like, listen, they ran a high school type offense against the Bengals to get that win, but to get Samuels and or other backs in the mix to help Connor out makes sense to me. Now, they're not a playoff team, but Aaron Jones, as great as he was the other day, I wouldn't really want to wear him down. The Packers are legit now. I wouldn't want to wear him down. If Williams can get healthy and take a few carries off his plate in certain weeks, then I would do that.
Jim, can you imagine the regular guy that's out there, right? Let's just say the guy that drives the garbage truck. He has to get up at 5 a.m, and he works 40 hours a week, maybe 48, because sometimes they pick up garbage on Saturdays.
Wait. Are you getting paid by their union to say all this nice stuff? Because I actually know a few of those guys that don't work anywhere near those kind of hours.
I was going to say,
okay, go ahead.
Jim nailed it. I was going to say that. Those union jobs and city jobs are pretty sweet, and you probably got a lot of sick days that you can take.
So not only that, they may start early in the morning, but believe me, they're done like by 1 o'clock.
All right, let's go to the coal miners. The coal miners now, they go to work every day. They jump in the coal. Like, no one's trying to make sure they last the whole year long. Are we really in the stage of running backs now where we have to give the guy times off the field so we can keep him for 16 games?
Look, I talk about this a lot on the Frenzy, and, not too many people really discuss it. But the one thing that I've come to realize is that these guys are so finely tuned that, they tend to break down more often as well because their bodies are in such top shape. There's no room for error. When a muscle goes bad, it goes bad. It goes a lot deeper because, look, these are guys that are fighting with no body fat at all. So they have nothing natural in their body to help out that way. So when you get everything so tightly wound up like this, it's a lot easier to get damaged.
Right now in Houston, Will Fuller is averaging 2 more points per game than DeAndre Hopkins. Mike, Will Fuller, we've run down this guy before. He puts up 2 or 3 good games every year. Is this the year that Will Fuller puts it together for a whole season?
I've been waiting a long time for him to do it, and I just think based on the amount of people that had him on the bench the other day, I just think you're going to get it wrong a lot with Will Fuller. I think he's really talented. I love the fact that he could have this relationship with Deshaun Watson, and he's an absolute keeper for the season. I just think he's a more extreme version of T.Y. Hilton, who is great, but T.Y. Hilton was always bolstered by his monster games. And I just think Will Fuller is just going to continue to do that. 3 or 4 great games. He gets banged up. He'll be out. And then Kiki Kuti comes in. So I think you keep him around in hopes of some consistency for the rest of the year. But there's another offensive line that is preventing their quarterback from being consistent.
I got to jump in here, though, real quick about Will Fuller, though. I actually did kind of like Fuller going into last week because Kenny Stills was out.
That's right.
The one thing I noticed early on in the season was Kenny Stills was taking a lot of the routes away from Will Fuller. And then when he went out, Will Fuller stepped right in and played well again. There's a chance that Kenny Stills plays again this week. I was telling everybody on the Frenzy, I mean, this is a perfect time to sell Will Fuller high. He's never going to have more value than he has coming off a 217-yard game with 3 touchdowns. Sell him high right now. Get as many pieces as you can get.
I think you're probably right.
I'm going to ask you guys a question you're not prepared for, so I'll take a long time to answer the question. I'll answer it first myself. I'm going to take Andy Reid and Bill Belichick out of the equation because they've been around for a while, and I'll take Mike Tomlin out of the equation too. If you had someone to coach your team in the NFL besides those three, who would you want as your coach? I'll tell you who mine is, and I think it's a different guy than most people would say. For me, it's Frank Reich of the Indianapolis Colts. I watch this team play, and they're prepared. Every week they have a different guy out. They had a quarterback change that they weren't even ready for, and they don't miss a beat to do what they did to Kansas City this week. I think the guy coached a great game, and there's a couple other things there. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are not as good since he's left the Philadelphia Eagles. I think when I look back to what Chuck Pagano did there when Andrew Luck went out, and Frank Reich is the guy, and I think this guy is going to be a great coach for a long time.
I've always felt that way about him. I thought he's an excellent coach. I agree with you. I don't know. I could see taking Andy Reid as well. Somebody who's had a good track record.
I would take him out.
You took him out? Okay.
Yeah,
so I missed that.
Tomlin and Belichick.
But yeah, I can't fault you for Frank Reich at all. I mean, I haven't really thought about it to that extent, but Frank Reich is absolutely a good coach, and I think he's going to be one of the top coaches, head coaches in the league for a long time. Look, it's not even like they've lost a step with Brissett back there after losing Luck. It's not. I'm not saying Brissett has played as good as Luck did last year when healthy, but they're winning, and he's doing everything they need to do to continue to win. So, a lot of that comes down to coaching, and I mean, it's all on him. But the team they've put together around him for him is really come together in a big way.
Mike, what's your thoughts on a coach?
The interesting thing is, you hear slight grumblings from people that you wonder if the Steelers and Tomlin are at the end of the road. I don't think they are, but it's interesting that you pulled him aside. I'm with you. I think they're tremendously well coached. In fact, Joe Rainieri, my host on Sunday's show, has been saying this for a bunch of weeks now about how well coached they are, that Brissett's well coached and that the Colts are. So I concur with that completely. Obviously, the other guys that I would throw in there that I would possibly rank above him are McVay and Sean Payton. Honorable mentions to Doug Peterson and John Harbaugh, but Frank Reich, I think, has done a great job. And what was impressive about the Chiefs game is the one thing that we often talk about is the single most important thing when it comes to these coaches, and it is adapting your game plan to your personnel and to whom you're playing. And they knew that the way that they were going to beat the Chiefs is to run them over and keep Mahomes off the field. So they've got Mahomes banged up a little bit. They went heavy with Marlon Mack, and it's a low-scoring under kind of game, and they won on the road. A really impressive win. One of the best wins of the NFL season so far.
And now we've had 2 back-to-back games from Mahomes where he played not as good football. Yeah. Are we finally starting to see a point where defenses might have figured some of his game out?
No, I don't think that. I think they got Byron Pringle running around out there. And he's getting hit. The offensive line play that a lot of teams there. So I still think, we're seeing a gifted kid play one of the great quarterbacks we'll see for the next 10 years. But I think there's holes in the Kansas City offense.
Yeah, I'm with Tony. I think they need Tyreek Hill back. I think with Mahomes limping around out there, that hampers a part of his game. And nobody should paint Pat Mahomes as a running quarterback because that's not what he is. But he is elusive. He is to another level to Aaron Rodgers' elusiveness is Pat Mahomes, and he can change arm angles and do a lot of things. And if he's walking around on a bad wheel, then it's going to hamper him. And you're right, Byron Pringle and Demarcus Robinson and everybody else.
I'll tell you what, it was last week without Devontae Adams in for the Green Bay Packers. I went to the waiver wire, and I went Geronimo Allison. I went Marquise Valding-Scanling. And, Jim, the Green Bay Packers don't have to throw the ball to win anymore. I don't like it.
Yeah. Most fantasy folks don't. And, the problem with it is it's Aaron Rodgers, and fantasy owners don't want to get away from that name. And they just have to realize that they have to at this point. I in one league last week, I played Minshew over Rodgers, and I got so much grief about it before the games were played. Like, how could you possibly sit Rodgers to play Minshew? Are you freaking nuts? Obviously, I'm not.
I got to tell you, Aaron Rodgers, for people out there, is averaging 20 fantasy points per game. These are the guys that are averaging 20 points. You ready? Kyle Allen of the Carolina Panthers. Nobody's running to put him in the lineup. Case Keenum, who could be back at starting quarterback this week. And Jimmy Garoppolo, who we just mentioned. He's actually behind a guy that I don't very much like, Josh Allen. He's behind Marcus Mariota. He's behind Kyle Murray and Gardner Minshew, the guy Jim just mentioned.
And Andy Dalton.
And you know what? They're 4-1, and they're playing great. They look like the best team in the NFC. Them are the Saints.
Well, the defense is playing pretty good. Good enough anyway to do what they need to do. They can still be run on, as we saw, but they're playing good enough in the back end to do a good job that way. It all comes together. But you're right. As fantasy owners, we want it all. We want them to win, but we also want to see our guys do great. And Rodgers just isn't that guy anymore.
He's not afraid to throw the coach under the bus on the sidelines either.
Well, he never has been.
He's a buddy of mine said something to me the other day during that game. He said Aaron Rodgers has afforded Matt LaFleur all the respect of me throwing the keys to the rental car guy that I return at the airport. He just he's not afraid to and he does it in such a dismissive way. He sort of shouts over his shoulder at somebody when he's walking by them. And LaFleur is trying to watch the game, and he's like, what? What did you say? Like, what's happening? And then he's got to focus on the game. So I don't know. Maybe he was yelling at about the official, but the reality is that he said this week that he's having a lot of fun right now. I don't know that I believe him because I guess the question to you guys, and Tony, I'd love your opinion on this as well as Jim's, is would Aaron Rodgers be comfortable taking a little bit of a backseat to the rest of the team as they hurtle towards the Super Bowl, or is the ego too big for that to happen?
I think he's comfortable long as they're at the top of the division and they look like a best team, because I think he sees what Peyton Manning compared to Tom Brady. And a lot of people think Peyton Manning had a better career, but he couldn't win the Super Bowls, right? When you put him in there. And I think Aaron Rodgers, as good as a career he has, realizes, you know what? He's come up a few times short when they get to the postseason and winning a couple Super Bowls. So I think that's the only way. If they don't win a Super Bowl, he's going to be throwing the keys to Matt LaFleur.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, with Rodgers too, and I just think that his career got started later. He's never going to sit at the top of any of those record books because he got started late. And the only thing for him to do now is to try and win, like, honestly, a couple of more rings and say that, I'm an easy Hall of Famer. He's not going to pass Brady. He's not going to have 80,000 passing yards like some of these other guys actually might. So I think that's it. I just think that's where he's at. Jim, I cut in on your comment.
No, I totally agree with you on that. He's not going to get there. He needs to get those Super Bowl wins to really get his name up on the list. And, so far that really hasn't come to fruition.
Is anybody concerned yet about Phillip Rivers, Keenan Allen, Melvin Gordon, and Austin Eckler? The Chargers have a ton of injuries, and last week it looked like it finally caught up to them, or are we just one bad game?
Jimmy, go first.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't think anything's caught up to him yet. I just think, a bad game. It just didn't work out the way he wanted to work out. I'm not really putting a lot of faith in that at this point. The Chargers defense is hurting. A lot of things going on with this team at this point, but I'm not putting it all on Rivers at this, right now.
Well, Rivers pulled off a 0 in the Scott Fish Bowl for me this past week, so that was a tough one.
Well, 2 interceptions didn't help when you don't throw a damn touchdown. I get it.
Exactly. So the 0 was tough, but I do think I've been worried about the Chargers for a while now. That Derwin James, Hunter Henry, the Melvin Gordon holdout, it felt like things were piling up on them. Yeah. I still think the entire roster is really good and that they're a playoff team, but right now they don't hold a candle to a few of the teams in the AFC. They're not playing that great.
Okun as well, out from the start. Yeah. So I think you got to watch that. It's going to be very interesting. All the Austin Eckler fans were happy last week as he had another big game, and we'll continue there. Mike, where can people check you out the rest of the week?
I'm on Sports Grid TV Network on Sundays, in-game live, Sports Grid TV and Fantasy Sports Radio Network weeknights.
And you can check out Mike 525 or 515. It doesn't matter on the Fantasy Sports Channel whenever he gets there.
Yeah.
And Jim Day, how about you? How about you?
That's right.
All you got to do is follow me on Twitter at FantasyTaz. Everything I do is there each and every week. Every day, there's something on there. So 6 days a week, I'm on TV.
Everything you do is on Twitter. That's kind of like Paris Hilton back in her day. What happened to her?
Hey, you know what? If they pay me that kind of money to show a little skin, I'm good with that.
What happened to her? She sort of flamed out.
Yeah, well, she probably got tired of people making fun of her.
Mike, were you following Paris Hilton? Do you know where she stands today?
Yeah, I do, actually, because I watched a documentary called Generation Meme, M-E-M-E, about the entire sort of social media realm of these phony celebrities, and she was the main person in that in that documentary about what happened to her life and how her Instagram followers are her life. It's the only people that she trusts as like her following, and she doesn't have any real friends.
Oh. There you got it, people.
Hey, she was a TV star for a hot cup of coffee.
She's still rich and famous.
Yeah,
that's
some
true.
people.
She is that.
2019, that's how you make it in the world. Get all your Instagram followers up. Listen to the podcast. Jim, we're going to be back next week. Week 7 will be next week. For all the people there that are math challenged, that will be over 50% of the season. We're there. Can you imagine that, Jim?
It just goes by so fast. And we say this every year. It just, we put so much time and effort into the preseason and getting ready and making all the calls that we make. And then, we blink and the season's over.
WTF Fantasy Football, Tony Cincotta, Mike Blewitt, Jim Day. We're out of here.